Hey 5th grade, it's Mrs. Thomas. Today I am going to be talking about shifts in verb tense. So what I'd like you to do is just watch the video as I go through it, and you're going to be answering a few questions on the Ed Puzzle as you watch. So first things first, go back. What is a verb? So we need to know what a verb is in order to know what verb tenses are, and then to be able to know how to shift our verb tenses correctly in our sentences. So a verb is an action word, or it can show a state of being, like the verb am, are, and is. Those are all technically verbs, even though they don't show action. So some more examples of verbs are on the screen: run, jump, sing, yell, help, appreciate, love, are, am, is, go, fall, and many, many more. There are hundreds of thousands of verbs in the English language. But what's important to know is that every single sentence must have a verb, and it's usually being done by the subject of the sentence. So verbs can have many different tenses, and we're just going to focus on the three major verb tenses that you are going to see in your sentences that you write or sentences that you read in the books or activities that we do in class. So the first type of verb tense is called past tense. And past tense shows what's already happened using the ending usually ed. So the example I have on the screen is I walked home from school yesterday. It shows that I, whoever the I is in the sentence, walked yesterday or has done it in the past. So that ed on the end of walk shows that it already happened. Then there is the present tense of verbs, and that's the most popular type of present tense. It's showing what is happening now. So these verbs usually end in es, or they are just the verb, like I cook spaghetti. That means that I am doing it now, and it's in present tense. It just depends on who or what the subject is. So for example, at the bottom it says I like walking home from school, ends with ing, it's happening in the present. And then my example number 2 is I walk home from school every day. So if it was she or he, then it would become walks. She walks home from school, or he walks home from school. But if it's I or they, we keep the word walk as just walk. And then there's future tense, which is not as common, but you will see in our sentences that we write or read. This shows what will happen in the future, and it usually is identified with the word will in front of any verb. So my example is she will walk home from school tomorrow. So it hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen in the future, and in this sentence it says it's going to happen tomorrow. So it has not happened yet. So we use those different tenses so we can identify what has or has not happened already in our sentence. And it helps us a lot as readers too, as we read through different sentences. So what I'd like you to do is we're going to have a couple of questions related to this chart here. You're going to start with the word dodge, and you're going to you're going to type the present tense form of the word dodge and the past tense verb of the verb dodge. I already have the future tense filled in for you. Will dodge. So maybe I will dodge a dodgeball, meaning I will do it in the future, but I haven't done it yet. Then we have the verb cheer. The present tense form of cheer is either just cheer or cheers, depending on the subject. And then you're going to tell me what would be the past tense of cheer and what would be the future tense of cheer. And then the last verb I have is cook. You're going to tell me what the present tense form of cook is. I already wrote the past tense for you. It is cooked. And future tense is going to be the verb plus the word will. So we're going to take a few minutes to enter those in for the next couple of questions related to this chart. So sometimes a sentence has multiple verbs. So these are called complex or compound sentences, where they have multiple verbs, multiple subjects, all mixed into one. So the example I have for you on the screen is the coach yelled, to yell is a verb, at me, and the obedient players hustled, hustle is also a verb, down the field. Notice how both verbs are in past tense. We have the word yell, and it has the ending ed. And then we have the verb hustle, which has the ending ed. When a sentence has many verbs, each verb tense must be the same. So we're going to try some practice with this on the next slide. So that means if I see the verb yelled first, that means any verb after that must also have an ed ending in order to match the verb tense. So yelled and hustled, it shows that it already happened. It was past tense verb. Okay? So we're going to take a look at this sample sentence. Jonah blushed and looks at his feet. I underlined the two verbs. The verb is blush and the verb is look. And notice how the verb blushed is in past tense. We know that because it has the ending ed, shows that it already happened. But then I keep reading and the verb looks is told in present tense. Looks at his feet. So it means that Jonah blushed in the past tense but looked at his feet in the present tense. And that doesn't make any sense. How can one verb happen later and one not have happened? It doesn't really make very much sense. So what we have to do is we have to identify the first verb in the sentence. In this case, it's blushed. And we will look at the ending and notice that it's past tense. And then whatever verb follows, we have to also double check that it has an ed ending as well. So the correct grammatical way to write this sentence is Jonah blushed, ed, and looked at his feet. Notice how they both end in ed. They're both past tense verbs. So that means the sentence is grammatically correct. So all you're doing is making sure that every single verb in the sentence has the same verb tense. Ready for another one? Read the sentence and identify the two verbs that are not the same tense. So here is my sentence. The artists huddle in the cold and sketched the river at dawn. What two verbs in this sentence are not the same? You should have chosen huddle and sketched. Both of those are our verbs. The artists are doing the huddling, that's the action, and they are also doing the sketching, which is another action. So they're huddling, meaning they're close together, and they're sketching, meaning they're drawing a picture at dawn. But now notice how huddle is in the present tense form. So the artists huddle, meaning it's happening right now. But sketched, unfortunately, is in the past tense and has the ending ed, meaning that it already happened. So the huddling is happening now, but the sketched already happened? That doesn't make any sense. So we need to make sure that the verb huddle and the verb sketched are matched. How do you think we can change the verb huddle to match the past tense of sketched? You should have chosen the artist huddled, ed. The artists huddled in the cold and sketched the river at dawn. Both verbs are matching and both verbs have the same verb tense. Let's try another one. Read the sentence and identify the two verbs that are not the same tense. Water from the creek trickled down the rocks and splashes softly into the shallow pond. Try to see if you can pick out what are the two verbs in this sentence that are not the same tense. You should have chosen the verb trickled, and you should have chosen the verb splashes. But we want to make sure that these two match. But trickled is in past tense, splashes is in present tense. So trickled is our first verb, which is in past tense, so we need to make sure we change the verb splashes to past tense. Which verb tense should I choose? You should have chosen splashed. Splashed is the past tense. That matches the past tense of trickled. Now that they're both in the same tense, I could read this sentence as water from the creek trickled down the rocks and splashed softly into the shallow pond. And that is how we shift verb tenses. Now what you're going to do is you're going to go to IXL. There is a skill on your checklist that I'd like you to complete. Your goal is to get a 75 or higher and see if you can correctly change verb tenses.